On the night of July 16th, 2025, Coldplay is on stage. The sky seems to fall over the crowd when a sky full of stars resonates through the speakers. The lights, synchronized wristbands, smiles, everything seems part of a perfect moment. But in a matter of seconds, what was euphoria turns into discomfort. On the central screen, the traditional kiss cam captures spontaneous kisses from the audience. Laughter, applause, everything is expected until the camera stops in a VIP zone. There, a man in a suit and an elegant woman are too close to appear as just colleagues. When they realize they're being recorded, the atmosphere changes. He lowers his head, she turns her face bewildered, the entire stadium feels it, and nobody there imagines they're witnessing the beginning of a scandal that in less than 72 hours will destroy careers, end a marriage, and expose the dark backstage of one of the most promising technology companies in the United States. The two characters from that scene would be quickly identified. Andy Byron, CEO of Straner, a multi-million-dollar startup specialized in data management, and beside him, Christen Cat, Human Resources Director of the same company. Both married, both silent. The image goes viral in seconds, but the story it unleashes goes far beyond a forbidden kiss. The first version of the video appears on TikTok that same night. The recording is short, shaky, but clear enough to show the intimacy that shouldn't be there. Around 7 a.m. the next day, the video is already circulating on other networks, accumulating millions of views. In less than 12 hours, internet users do what has become protocol in public scandals. They identify faces, cross profiles, confirm positions and connections. Andy Byron is married, father of 2 children. Christen is also married. The betrayal narrative no longer depends on assumptions and then, like gasoline on fire, a second video emerges recorded from another angle, closer, more intimate. They weren't just close, they were holding hands, exchanging discreet kisses, conversing with the naturalness of those who have forgotten the world. At this point, the lack of a public statement is no longer silence, it's denial. Both profiles on LinkedIn disappear at the same time, as if trying to digitally erase a reality that has already gotten out of control. But the real world responds and responds quickly. The name of Christen Byron, Andy's wife, appears in comments, forums, searches. She doesn't say a word, but does something even more impactful. She removes her husband's surname from her social networks and shortly after deletes her account completely. For those watching from outside, it was as if the emotional impact of betrayal was revealed in subtle but painfully eloquent digital gestures. On Friday, July 18th, Straner publishes an official statement. Andy, Byron, and Christen Cat are separated from their positions indefinitely. The company's co-founder assumes interim leadership, and from there, what was only betrayal takes an institutional dimension. The case stops being personal, becomes corporate crisis, and as in every environment where silence weighs, other voices begin to emerge. In the early morning of the same day, anonymous comments begin appearing on Reddit and Twitter. They are former Straner employees, now more willing than ever to tell what they saw behind the scenes. The accounts point to a pattern. Andy Byron wasn't just a CEO involved in a marital scandal. He was, according to multiple sources, a toxic boss, obsessed with goals and aggressive with subordinates. The type of leader who spoke of meritocracy, but made decisions based on personal closeness. And at that point, Christen Cat's name appears again. According to accounts, she was a key piece in a corporate culture that rewarded relationships, not results. A specific comment gains strength in discussions. At Straner, you quickly realize that competition wasn't the only factor taken into account. The message groups between former employees, according to the New York Post, were celebrating not for morbid pleasure, but for a collective sense of belated justice. Many saw in the scandal a kind of settling of accounts, as if for the first time the pedestal had broken for those who always acted as if they were above everything. In that scenario, the figure of Christen Byron begins to acquire unexpected contours. If before she was just the cheated wife, now she begins to become a symbol. When she returns to social media, Saturday she holds nothing back. Her outburst is direct, painful, and transparent. She writes that she never imagined her husband would betray her, that she believed the overtime, trips, and absences were sacrifices for love of family, but everything collapsed when she saw live the kiss that shouldn't exist. Her most shared phrase is short-cutting. I saw my husband kiss another woman on a giant screen, and the worst part is I had the best seats at home. In few hours, she transforms into something more than a victim. Meghan becomes a voice, a woman who chose not to carry others' shame, who decides not only to separate, but also to erase her husband's surname, literally. "I don't want pity, I don't want sympathy, I want to be heard," she says. "I didn't lose, I found myself again." The impact of Meghan Carey and Byron's words wasn't limited to social media. They crossed the bubble of comments and reached the headlines of major media outlets. She didn't present herself as a victim, but as someone who decided not to stay silent. What began as a marital scandal transformed into something much bigger, a modern symbol of exposure, fall, and reconstruction. Coldplay continued with their tour. The Massachusetts crowd continued with their lives. But for Andy Byron, applause became silence, and for Meghan, silence became a scream. With each new repercussion grew the pressure first on the company, then on those involved. Strainer's internal environment was already rotten before the crisis, and now the veneer of innovation in modern culture began to crack. One of the co-founders, Rye Walker, who had already left the company years before, published a single phrase, "dry, precise." "That's not the culture we built. No defense, no euphemism, just distance." Throughout the days, more former employees felt brave enough to speak. Many of the accounts coincided. Coexistence with Andy Byron was described as exhausting, unstable, marked by veiled humiliations and unattainable demands. Christen Cat's presence, meanwhile, was viewed with distrust. She centralized HR decisions, concentrated informal power, and, in some words, knew too much to contradict him. The environment described behind cameras at Straner resembled more a courtly politics than a collaborative environment. The story the public saw from outside seemed simple. An extramarital romance exposed, live, and viralized, but inside what was revealed was a system based on favoritism, silence, and mutual protection, where error only had consequences when it was too visible to be ignored. On July 2020, Andy Byron officially resigns from the CEO position. The administrative council's note is protocolary, almost cold, but makes clear the decision was unilateral. There was no negotiation. Christen Cat, until then silent, remains so. No statement, no publication. Her husband also doesn't speak, and for many that silence weighs as much as the facts. The absence of voice in this case isn't neutrality, it's an exit. Meanwhile, Meghan becomes something rare in the era of scandals, an example of dignity that doesn't demand applause. Her third and final publication is more serene, but no less powerful. "Today I officially removed his surname from mine." Some will say it's just a detail. For me, it's closure, it's not revenge, it's peace. With few words, she closes a cycle, not to please the public, but to free herself from an imposed narrative. Andy Byron's case isn't the first to expose the fragility between public image and private conduct, but it does reveal something deeper. How much power can shield itself with structure until an unexpected moment, like a camera focus in a packed stadium, breaks that barrier. The scandal wasn't planned. There was no formal complaint. It was carelessness. An intimate gesture exposed at the worst possible moment, but that single gesture was enough for everything to collapse. And in the end, the memory that remains isn't the kiss nor the public shame, not even the corporate fall. What really remains is Meghan's voice, her refusal to disappear, her clarity in not accepting that a betrayal for being intimate should be invisible, her strength in transforming pain into a stance. "I don't want pity, I want to be heard." And she was. The Straner scandal became a mirror for many, wives, husbands, co-workers, former employees, all recognizing there's something they had already lived but never managed to name. It was a case of infidelity, yes, but also of poorly distributed power, of silence sustained by convenience, of structures that reward wrong loyalties, and above all, of a woman who chose not to carry anyone's guilt. In a world where everything is recorded, filmed, shared, there's no longer space for truths manipulated from above. Sometimes exposure begins with a kiss, others with a publication, but what really brings down an empire is the moment when someone decides not to stay silent anymore. Andy Byron lost his position, lost prestige, lost what he was trying to hide. Christen Cat disappeared from radar, and Straner now tries to rebuild what was corroded from within. But Meghan Carey didn't lose anything. On the contrary, she emerged from this chaos with something many never find: clarity, firmness, and a voice that nobody managed to silence. And perhaps the hardest lesson of this story is precisely that. When truth comes to light, there's no structure that can withstand it. And when someone chooses not to disappear, but to remain standing, even wounded, that's where true reconstruction begins. Not of a company, nor an image, but of an entire life. What did you think of this story? Did Megan handle the situation the right way? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this story as compelling as I did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Ring the notification bell so you never miss when we uncover the next big story. Till next time, remember, in a world where everything is recorded, authenticity isn't just valuable, it's essential. See you in the next one.